We are up to the San Jose Sharks in the all-time greats list, and their all-time best. It's hard to argue against Patrick Marleau, isn't it? Now, you can argue Joe Thornton. You can argue Patrick Marleau. You can argue amongst yourselves. But I don't see how it can't be one or the other. You can argue maybe both. 1,102 career points for Marleau as a member of the Sharks. 518 of those are goals. Now, for Thornton, 804 assists to lead the team in that area. These are very good totals. So Marleau and Thornton are likely your two greats. Power play goals, Marleau 161 career goals on the power play for San Jose. Jeff Odgers leads them in all-time penalty minutes with 1,001. Yeah, it's kind of surprising because you look at, especially when they were an expansion team in those few years after, they always had somebody who could punch. They always had somebody who could fight. They always had somebody that you really didn't want to drop the gloves with, whether it was the missing link. We all remember Link Gates. And they went through their share of enforcers. But Jeff Odgers is still the all-time leader in penalty minutes with 1,001. Kind of a surprise. But that being said, when you talk about their all-time greats, you have to mention Marc-Edouard Vlasic as being their greatest defensive defenseman they've ever had. Pavelski, of course, sadly goes to Dallas, and I say sadly from a San Jose fan's perspective, goes to Dallas. Couture, their current captain. Brent Burns, best defenseman they've ever had. I don't know that that's necessarily all that debatable. Owen Nolan was their captain for a while. He was down there for quite a while. And I have to mention Chichu because he did lead the league in goals just that 1 year, and then it just burned out for him from there. But yeah, he ends up with 165 career goals as a member of the Sharks, and 56 of them were that one magical season where he led the league. Now, goaltending, it's Nabokov, right? Or Nabokov. Nabokov's net. 293 career wins. 14,757 shots against. So he's the leader there. Shutouts, Nabokov leads with 50 career shutouts. Save percentage, Antti Niemi with a 917. It surprised me too. Niemi being the best save percentage this team's ever had. So he's in that conversation for maybe the greatest Sharks goaltender, but not really, because Nabokov has been the guy for Sharks fans. And, of course, Jones has been experiencing some downtime over the last year and a half, approximately. But before that, really, really solid goaltender. And, to be honest, last year in the playoffs, outside of a couple of shaky games against Vegas, Martin Jones played very well last year in the playoffs. That's part of the reason why he kept his job going into this year. Because they saw the team go to the conference finals. They saw what Jones did to get them there, and they went, yeah, no, he's fine. He should be the starter again. And then, of course, this year, it's been a bit of a misadventure again. Vesa Toskala does deserve to be in the conversation. Now, they would turn him over to Toronto, and in Toronto, it wasn't all-time greats for him with Toronto. Kiprasov was another one. So they had Nabokov, Kiprasov, Toskala, all three of them at the same time, and they went with Nabokov. Just keep trying to say those three back to back to back. But they went with Nabokov as their starter. And so Kiprasov would end up being traded to Calgary. Like I said, Toskala would go to Toronto. Differing results there. Kiprasov becomes arguably the best goaltender Calgary ever had. He and Mike Vernon, you can have that argument between the two. Vernon would also play for San Jose, so they both had San Jose on their resume when they retired. Urbe has to be mentioned when you talk about San Jose goaltending, because Artur Urbe, the legend, starts with his time with the Sharks. And there have been a lot of goaltenders who've come through San Jose. But we'll get back to that when we get into this large column here. So that's your all-time greats. The most points this team ever had was 2008-2009 when they had 117. President's Trophy, and then out in the playoffs. And that was under Todd McLellan, who I've picked as their best coach. Now, it's tough because Ron Wilson had a good run there, and Peter DeBoer had a nice run as well. They get to the Stanley Cup Finals with DeBoer behind the bench. But I picked McLellan, but again, Sharks fans, I'm sure, may want DeBoer as the all-time best, or maybe Ron Wilson is the all-time best. You can make an argument for any of the three. General manager, Doug Wilson, their current general manager. And I know people haven't been all that happy with what he's done recently, present company included. The decision to keep Erik Karlsson and let go of the players that he did. there is some belief that maybe that hastened their descent from the playoffs this season. But we'll find out next year whether or not this was just a one-off and they're going to bounce back, or if it's a sign of things to come. Now, consecutive playoff appearances between 2004 and 2014, they made 10 consecutive playoff appearances. It would have been 11 if we'd had a season in 2004, 2005, but we didn't. So, their overall picture has been a pretty good one for an expansion team in the early 90s. Their best team, I went with the 2015-2016 Stanley Cup finalists. I thought, yeah, they went to the finals. That was likely their best team. It was a surprise. The 2016 playoffs in general were a big surprise, where you get San Jose and St. Louis as your conference finals, which was great because it was like, hey, neither of these teams have won the Stanley Cup yet, so that'd be awesome to see one of them win it. And then Pittsburgh went, no, and pushed aside the San Jose Sharks in the finals. But they did reach the finals, and they did well in the finals as well. Now, most wins in the regular season against the Los Angeles Kings, they have 82. Not a surprise that somebody that's in California is the team they've got the most success against when it comes to wins. Points percentage against Winnipeg, 671. So that includes the Atlanta Thrashers as well, and that's not unusual to see that on this board. Goals for against LA, they've recorded 458 goals. So they do well. However, goals for per game against Carolina, they've recorded 3.29 goals per game, which is most goals per game against any one team. And of course, that would include a few games against the Hartford Whalers before they moved to Carolina. Goals against per game, Minnesota. They only allow 2.37 goals against per game against the Wild. And again, it's a team from that expansion era of the 90s and early 2000s, even though this is an early 90s expansion team as well. So it's kind of weird that even the expansion teams are like, yeah, no, we do really well against each other, keeping them off the board. So notable captains, Couture, Pavelski, Rob Blake, notable captain, Marlowe, Nolan, and of course Doug Wilson. And this team has had a lot of pretty big names as captain. I'm still surprised Doug Wilson's not in the Hall of Fame personally. But there are a lot of players that I look at that are in the Hall of Fame and I say, I don't know how you're in and that guy's out. Wilson would be one of those guys that there are players that are currently in the Hall of Fame. I can look at and say, I'm not sure how this guy's in and Wilson isn't. As we have that debate where people say, well, that guy wasn't really elite, so he doesn't belong in the Hall. But then you look at some of the guys who were in it and you say, well, neither was that guy. So how? I don't understand the criteria, but again, it's been talked about many times over, the criteria of getting into the Hall. So anyways, maybe Wilson gets in as general manager, right? All right. So the He Was a Shark list. So from the Doug Wilson topic, we will move into the He Was a Shark territory. A lot of goaltenders here that it might be easy to forget were members of the Sharks. Thomas Greiss. Yep. Stalock's not on the board, but Stalock was a Shark as well. Ed Belfour, he was a Shark briefly. Didn't play particularly well, and they let him go. James Reimer, also briefly a member of the Sharks. They let him go. Brian Boucher, member of the Sharks for, I think it was 27 games. Claude Lemieux didn't get a goal as a member of the Sharks in 18 games. Got one assist. The attempted comeback by Lemieux fell short, but the Sharks gave him that shot. Petri Skriko did retire as a Shark, which I had forgotten all about it till I saw him on the list. Chris Terreri was a Shark. So another goaltender. They've had a lot of goaltenders, and yet they've been remarkably stable when you look at their goaltending. I did the goaltending history videos last summer, and yeah, the history for the Sharks really has been remarkably consistent. Scott Gomez was a Shark. Igor Larionov. Now, if you've been following the great playoff series that I've been doing, I did mention Larionov against Detroit and being a big part of the reason how they knocked out the Wings. But Larionov's time with the Sharks was short. It was less than 100 games during the regular season. Bernie Nichols, might be easy to forget Nichols was there as he bounced around a bit towards the end of his career. Brian Lawton. Brian Lawton, known as kind of being a bust as a number one draft pick. And he ended up being a Shark. Played a full season. He scored relatively well for the Sharks that 1 year, too. Jeremy Roenick was a Shark for approximately 120 games. John McClain was a Shark as well. Remembered, of course, as a Devil, and he ended up playing for the Sharks. Al Iafrate didn't play very long for the Sharks, but Iafrate was very memorable wherever he went. So I'm sure Sharks fans would remember Iafrate, but it might be easy to forget that he was a member of the Sharks at all if you followed his career. Gustav Nyquist is on the board because as a rental last year at the deadline, it's going to be really easy to forget that he was a Shark. He didn't put up a ton of points during that regular season. Playoffs, he was a key guy, but again, during the regular season, he only plays, a little over a dozen games, I think. So it'll be easy to forget Nyquist was a Shark in between being a Red Wing and a Columbus Blue Jacket. And Bill Guerin. Bill Guerin was a Shark as well. Again, not for an overly long period of time, which is how he gets into the he was a Shark category. But there were a lot of others I could have put up there. Apparently, other than having to be a Ranger at some point in your career, it's really good if you can be a Shark at some point as well. They've had a lot of guys go through that roster considering they've only been around since the early 90s. So there you go. We're at San Jose, which means tomorrow it's St. Louis's turn. And so tune in for that. But yeah, so the all-time best of the San Jose Sharks is on the board. And at some point, maybe we see a Stanley Cup. But the question becomes a matter of when. How long does this rebuild take? And does the GM that I have up there, Doug Wilson, does he stay at the helm all the way through? Or at some point, does he find himself on the chopping block? I don't think there's any desire to change things when it comes to general manager in San Jose. I don't get that impression. But we'll see, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It means a lot. Remember, stay home as much as you can. Stay as safe as possible. Wash your hands. I will talk to you again soon.